All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Very excited and loading up the car to go up to Sebring. But before we get into labs, I do want to go over a few things. All right, so first off, these are not my original wheels. The car came with black wheels, the other design wheels. But I picked up these for pretty cheap, and the reason why is because I wanted to try a performance tire in the stockish or stock size. Okay, so I decided to try out the Vitour P1 in stockish size. So the rear is a stock size, but the front is a little bit wider at a 285 30/20. So they are making a 275, so the same size as stock, but at the time that I bought these, they weren't in stock, so it is what it is. I also, I think that the car will benefit from a little bit of a little bit more front end grip, okay? And also, since I had the ice mode issue on the stock tires and not on the Nankangs, I'm hoping that that a little bit of a wider tire will keep the ice mode at bay. I had a lot of ice mode issues at Sebring. Sebring is very bumpy. There's a lot of weird transitions from old runway pavement to new concrete. So there's all kinds of stuff. And so, Sebring is wild. So I don't want to have a lot of ice mode issues, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping that, doing this will also help with that. Now, some of you will say, well, you're an idiot, you don't know how to drive, and you're spun out, and you should stick with the stock tires. And honestly, you're right. But I can't show you because they're in the back of the truck, but my stock tires started to chunk. So like in the middle, they started to like delaminate a little bit. Hopefully the Vitours, work out. And since they're in stock size, you know what I mean, or stockish size, the electronics should stay happy. Let's cross fingers that they stay happy. Okay, another thing that I heard a lot, not a lot, but I heard it from several key people, was to lower the car, but more importantly to reduce the stagger. Okay, so basically lower the rear more than the front. So I tried to lower the rear by the 20 millimeters that the book says that you can do, but I really wasn't able to because I would be out of thread. So I lowered it like 17 millimeters in the back and like 5 millimeters in the front. We'll see how, or if that makes any difference, you know what I mean? And then the other thing that I was recommended by several key people was also to add the Z51 rear sway bar. I'll be honest with you, I don't understand much of suspension and dynamics and stuff like that, but when I first think of putting a bigger rear sway bar, I think, well, the car is going to become more oversteery. That's what we do with the Evos and stuff like that. We put a giant rear sway bar and we leave the stock front, and some people even make the stock front softer because the car understeers so much. You want the rear to have more bite. So that kind of left me scratching my head for a little bit, but hopefully the car is less understeery in the slow stuff, okay, and then more stable in the long stuff. And Sebring has a lot of, longer but very fast turns, okay. So I definitely will welcome, the rear to be more stable. The rear in this car, to be honest with you, is kind of vague. It's kind of, you're sitting much further forward than what I'm used to. And I think that, it's a bit softer, it's a bit heavier and stuff like that. So the car, you kind of feel disconnected from the back. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if that helps. We'll see if the tires help. We'll see if lowering it helps. And let's hope that we get many good laps. right, well, that was definitely a success. That was more like the day that I was hoping to be the first day out in the new car. Okay, I think that the changes that I made, you know, the sway bar and lowering the ride height, mostly in the back, that definitely did help. And I think that I could recommend that to anybody that's going to be tracking this car. The car felt really stable. It didn't do anything weird. I never felt like, you know, the rear end was just gonna, you know, I don't know where, snap out. And, you know, 221 is definitely not super fast for this type of car. Okay. But, you know, keep in mind that like the first time that I went out with my C7, I ran like a 226 and I was very happy with that. And it took me actually several years to get down into the teens. And I'm sure that in time, with more seat time, as I get more used to the car and all the stuff about it, you know what I mean, I'll be able to get that. So the time will come down. I'm not really worried about that. I don't want to be chasing time yet on the car until I'm really, really comfortable with it. One thing that I noticed when I started editing this video is that the speed that's displayed on the PDR, so like the speed that I'm overlaying on, you know, on the track video and stuff like that, it's off. It's off by like 4 to 5 mile an hour. So the what you see in the video, the speed that you see in the video overlaid is 4 to 5 mile an hour slower than the actual speed. That the speedo, so the speedo of the car matches the GPS lap timer. So that like on the back straight going into turn 17 and stuff like that, the speedo, I looked down several times, and even the HUD, the heads-up display, I was reaching 150, 151 before, you know, getting on the brakes and stuff like that, and the GPS lap timer agrees, you know. But for some reason, yeah, the PDR shows like 146, 147. I'm not sure why. In Cosworth Pi, here's an overlay. There's actually a channel that shows GPS speed. So the car has another speed that is actually correct. But for some reason, the PDR overlay uses this other speed channel that is wrong. So yeah, keep that in mind. A tidbit. I don't know if this is only with this car. I'd be curious. So if you have a C8 and you've kind of seen this, or please take a look and then let me know down in the comments. So this was a very typical summer day, you know, at Sebring. It was well into the 90s. It was very, very humid. It felt disgusting. Okay. And then, but so like I mentioned in my previous video about the temperatures, you know, the car, as you can see here, you know, transmission and oil temps are very, very good. Okay. But coolant temp, I was expecting it to be lower with how many heat exchangers and stuff like that this car has. But I did see it in the lower 220. So definitely not overheating. And the car never felt like it lost power, not even a bit, okay? It seemed like the mile an hour was the same lap after lap after lap. And I was basically out there the whole freaking time. I was like the first one out, and all the way out until it threw the checker flag. Now keep in mind that I do have the scrape armor grills, so I don't know if that impedes some of the airflow, but yeah, something to keep in mind. Now the Vitours, I know a lot of people are curious about this, especially since these are like, you know, stock size. This is one of the only stock size outside of like the Michelin's performance tires that actually do fit. I really like them. I think it's a good lapping tire. I don't know that is as good as a Supercar 3R. Definitely not at that level. I would compare it more to maybe like a Nankang CRS V2 or the like, okay? So yeah, not like the best kind of tire, but not a slow tire either. Now, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I don't have that much experience in this car, and I really wasn't pushing this car to the limit. You know, I was driving maybe 6 or 7 tenths. But, you know, for a fast, heavy car like this, they didn't overheat, okay? So I started in the morning session at about 24 PSI, and then they got to about 35, 36, I think, and then I bled them down. And then the rest of the day, they would get to maybe 32, 33 top, you know, peak pressure, and then they just kind of stay there. Where like a Nankang CRS, you know, the pressures just continue. If you stay out there the whole time, they just keep climbing and climbing and climbing. You know, and that's, you know, a rough indication of temperature. Now, I don't like the traction control in the car. It's very, very intrusive. Sport mode is very, very intrusive. Going through some of the turns, it feels like the car is just being held until you have the steering wheel basically straight, and the car will not give you full power until the steering wheel is basically straight. I ran most of the day in sport. Towards the end of the day, I did venture into race 1. which was a little bit better, okay, but it was still pretty intrusive. Definitely not, the C7, I feel like it had a better traction control system for the power band. I'm gonna guess at this early stage that the fastest laps on this car is gonna be probably with everything off. Now, the car does have a lot of braking power, okay, even with the stock pads. So I ran half the day on the stock pads, and then the second half I switched over to the gyro disc, the GP40s, okay? But on the stock pads, I was seeing, you know, like 1.4 or so peak, 1.2 average decel G, okay? Which is, you know, it's not like, whoa, but it's not bad, you know, for stock pads and stuff like that, it's not bad. And then when I went to the GP40s, that jumped to about 1.6 or something like that, but the average was still about like 1.4. It doesn't seem like the car really wants to brake any harder than that. I don't know if it's just the tires or the electronic system or something like that. I did not get like ice mode per se, but it does give you like the pedal definitely gets harder when you reach like the threshold point of braking, where it seems like the car, the computer, you know, whatever, the electronics don't really want to give you any more braking. When I ran my best time at Sebring with the C7Z, I really only pulled about 1.3 G. And this, with the stock pads, I was seeing 1.4. So it's not that the car cannot stop. It definitely can stop even with the stock hardware stuff. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like, because it gives you like this hard pedal. It's not like the ice mode hard pedal where it's just like it will not move. It continues to move, but it's like artificially hard. So it feels like you're reaching the bottom of the pedal, and the car is just not giving you any more braking force. So yeah, it's just weird. Again, something that, you know, you just kind of have to get used to it. I'm sure I will get used to it, but I wish it didn't have that stupid electronic system. I do like the GP40 pads. They were really easy to break in. I mean, I threw them in at the track, and then I kind of went out the track, and I did maybe a few stops, and then I immediately went back and did a full session. Yeah, and they did great. They did not feel like they overheated or anything like that. They didn't really like destroy the rotors. Short amount of use, you know, so I guess we'll see long term how they last and how they do. On the next video, I'm going back out to Sebring. I'm actually going to be at Sebring for 2 days. Man, I haven't been at Sebring for 2 days, like back-to-back days, in many years. But I really feel like I need the seat time in this car. You know, I really need to become very tight with this car, become more in tune with what the car likes and the driving style and all the nuances and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm gonna do a back-to-back day back at Sebring, and you know, we'll see what happens. I'll bring you along for the journey. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.